Na década de 40, o economista Joseph Schumpeter afirmou: o capitalismo evolui por meio da seleção natural entre as empresas. Só que essa seleção costuma ser cruel. No Brasil, por exemplo, quase 80% das empresas que eram consideradas as maiores do país há 35 anos já não existem mais. Para sobreviver, o caminho é apostar em inovação, transformar ideias criativas em ganhos reais. A tese é defendida com entusiasmo pelo economista americano Robert Rosenfeld, que conversou com a repórter Heloísa Gomide em São Paulo. Neste Conta Corrente Especial, você vai ver que no caminho para a inovação é preciso respeitar a cultura de cada empresa.
Okay, we know you wrote a very successful book about this. What's the formula to have innovation in your life, in your career, in your company? Is there a recipe for being creative?
When you think of a recipe, you think of, if I put all these pieces together, I can now cook it and it's perfect. The book focuses on the principles that sustain innovation, the human principles that sustain innovation. These principles are timeless. And what's very important is, if you understand these principles, and your leadership lives it and transmits it, it creates the culture of innovation that's necessary to sustain innovation. So, for example, at its most fundamental level, trust is the foundation by which all things happen. And it doesn't really matter whether I'm here in Brazil, or I happen to be in Mumbai, or I happen to be in Rochester, New York, where I come from. Trust is foundational. And trust is not something you talk about, it's something you live. Innovation is it is basically the lifeblood of a company. If I don't innovate, I die. If I don't continue to create new, I die. But what we forget lots of times is that creation of new ranges from one end of a spectrum to another, from incremental to breakthrough. Incremental is, how do I improve something? I must continuously improve whatever I'm doing. And it runs all the way over to the other side, which is breakthrough, which is brand new ways or breaking the current paradigm of thought and coming up with a brand new product or service. That whole spectrum is innovation.
And how do you find out which one is you?
Very good. So let me just answer one other thing. Innovation is when I take a creative act and I generate novel thought and I go all the way through to a quantifiable gain. And a quantifiable gain is something I can measure. I'll give you an example. It's easy in business. I can take a look at my bottom line, I have a quantifiable gain. But if I'm a school system in a city, my quantifiable gain would be the number of students that graduate. If I'm a university, it might be the number of students that attend, that go into successful professions. It could be the number of publications I have, but it's always measurable.
So you have to measure to know how creative and different ideas you can get.
Right, you have to measure the end result. I have to be able to see it. So I can have a lot of creative thought. And many of us have been in sessions, brainstorming sessions, and create lots of new things, right? But nothing ever happens. And that's because we haven't innovated, but we've created. The created is the generation of novel thought. Now, you asked the question, how do I know who I am? And the answer is, to a large extent, all of us are very complex. But basically, for innovation to happen, it only happens through people. We have to remember that. It's the people who generate the ideas. They convert the problems to ideas. It's the people that develop the trust. It's the people that understand how to make it happen. So it is up to the leadership, the innovation leadership, to literally encourage the people to step forward and be who they are, which goes back to your question. How do I know who I am? Well, there's many dimensions for you, but I'll give you one that is very interesting. In innovation, One very important dimension is your cognitive style, which means the way you think, right? And we're going to make a spectrum again between those who are builders to those who are pioneers. Builders,
everybody wants to be a pioneer.
Actually, I hope not. And here's the reason. I hope everyone learns to be who they are. And we leverage them who they are as compared to some other thing we're making up in our head. So the builders are the ones that literally run the organization. They make sure every day everything works over and over and over again. And if I want to put a successful product out the door, I better make sure I have people who literally do that. If not, it's not going to work. This station wouldn't work if I didn't have everyone working and doing what they have to do to make that happen. And if they decided to vary that every day and make it different, we wouldn't put anything out. So the builder side very much makes the things happen. They're at the further end of the innovation cycle. The first part deals with more of the pioneering side. These are people who generate thought that are very different. They see things very different than others. These pioneers, when they start thinking, and they start thinking about a particular problem, suddenly something else occurs to them, and their mind, we call it pinging, bounces up and back in different ways in different subject areas, which allows them to generate thought that is very different. They're not trying to do this. This appears almost to be innate in them. So you have the builder on one end, the pioneer on the other. The pioneer likes to generate this thought, but usually doesn't like to make it happen all the way through, and likes to continue to generate the thought. So when I have an organization, the innovation leader needs to orchestrate all the people, from the builders to the pioneers. And that, if I can do that well, I can sustain the innovation that's inside my organization. And in order to do that, I have to set up infrastructure that allows that to happen.
So in your book you said that innovation starts when you turn problems into ideas. Can you give us an example of that? Someone who could overcome a problem with moving straight forward.
Okay, there's two things. Let me go through. One of them is when you convert problems to an idea. We can take someone like de Maistre, who invented Velcro. When he invented Velcro, he was walking in the woods and a cocklebur stuck to his jacket. And he looked at that and he said, I wonder what that means. Went back, looked under a microscope, saw these hooks. And he said, oh, okay, I can make this out of it. And he made Velcro. So he converted a problem to an opportunity, to an idea. But that wasn't good enough. Now you have to make it and bring it into the marketplace. So there are certain people who convert problems to ideas, and there are other people who like to drive that into the marketplace and are much more entrepreneurial, make things happen. Inside our organization, we have all of them. And we need to know who does what, and we have to literally value all, because it's all that makes that work.
And how can a company support that in daily basis?
Okay. It can do that in different ways. For example, most of us, probably listening, would say if I'm on the incremental side, Deming really exemplifies the incremental side. And if I take a look at it, I could look at Six Sigma as a process. I could look at Kaizen Tien processes. These are different processes that have been used in different parts of the world, and I'm very sure are used here. That does incremental. And by putting that in place, the innovation leadership that's present gives the tools to the people by which to do this and make it better and better and better. Now, the other side, where we deal with the pioneers, generally speaking, we don't have a way to do that. Every company has its own culture and its own expression of creativity. And so how they set up their creative center will reflect who they are. Google is clearly reflecting who they are, and it's excellent. But who we are, what company we're in, that we need to determine. The next thing that needs to happen, which is very important, We have to supply resources to the people inside. So you could set up an innovation center which allows people to come. Let's say I was an engineering firm, allows people to come into there 24 hours a day. It may be a person who's staffing it, and they can build anything they want that may not be related to their job. Who supplies them with that? If the company supplies them, or the organization supplies them, it will stimulate the innovation that has to be done. There's been numerous studies covering this. One of them is by a person by the name of Berth in Europe, where he looked at the top 73 innovations in Europe, and he found that 67% of them had resources available to them that allowed them to stimulate this. And by the way, 75% of the top innovations in Europe in the year he studied it came from the bottom up. It didn't come from top down. 12.5% from top down. 12.5%. So the people inside are the ones that have this. How do I tap them? I must build the infrastructure. I got to build the pipes. I have to become a plumber and literally connect the pipes up.
Now talking about Brazil. Brazil ranks in a very low position for registration of patents. Why? We have good ideas in here, like biodiesel, for example.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What can we do to improve that, to have innovation as a method here in Brazil?
Well, there's two things you're asking. One of them is about patents and about innovation. First of all, patents basically is a strategy of a company. They can say, I want to patent, increase my number of patents. I've seen this over the years. Multiple sets of companies have done that. And when you do that, you'll get more patents because the inventions are already here. It's whether we choose to patent them. It really is our choice, our leadership choice. I am convinced in Brazil we have more than enough inventions. We're just not stimulating it to come forward and do the patents. Next is we may not want to patent. That's a strategy of a company. Innovation is when I take those ideas and I convert them to the quantifiable gain. We seem to be doing that here. We're growing, right? So we're innovating. Can we improve? Of course we can. And every company and country wants to improve.
And you came to Brazil to help that also.
To help that out.
You have an office in India, South Africa, Europe, US, and now Brazil. Why Brazil?
Well, Brazil is really a growing economy. It also has extremely innovative people. And I would add one other piece. We're talking about the human principles that make innovation happen. Brazil, we understand the relationships very well. My limited exposure here I've been extremely impressed. We understand how to build relationship. We understand how to make that work for us in our society. If we can do that, we can transfer that inside our organizations and innovate better. Because innovation is based on people. It's not just technology and business. That's the language we use, technology and business. It really is, can I leverage the people I have inside and help them do what they have to do? And in order to do that, I have to build relationships, and I have to build trust. I have to understand how all this fits together. Brazil is poised to do that.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Thank you very much for this interview.